Thank you, Mr. President. Special thank you to the Senator from the 24th for expressing many of my views far more eloquently than I can. I rise to speak to a somewhat more pedestrian concept, but one that's very important, the Hope Scholarship. It is still in crisis. Over the last few days, we have heard from the numbers, folks in the governor's office, and from the administrators of the programs about the impact of last year's reform. And I don't believe that any of you who voted for this plan intended this outcome. Put simply, the reform from last year has failed. First, the plan did not achieve its purpose of ensuring that hope lives within its means. Second, the plan will harm not only the hardworking, high-achieving students who depend on hope, but ultimately our state's economy. The governor's budget and the reports from those administration officials show that hope, despite the changes last year, is still not living within its means. The governor's budget calls for hope to dip into the reserves again this year. We will send out more than we take in again. In fact, the budget calls for the reserves to be spent until they cannot be spent anymore. That means that the reform that was passed did not do what it was supposed to do. And the reason that the administration is dipping into the lottery reserves is to mask the true impact of the plan. According to the Student Finance Commission, you'll see the numbers above me on the board. We will reduce the lottery reserves to the minimum next year, and then the full impact of the plan will be felt. By 2016, as you see on the board, in just 4 years, Hope will pay less than half the cost of going to college. And hope will continue to vanish over time. This projection was not provided to this body last year. What it means is that every year, there will be more and more high-achieving students who cannot afford to go to college. And it has been widely reported in the media, the miscalculated Zell Miller program will make this problem worse. In addition, we already know that today, because of last year's changes to the Hope Grant, there are 4,200 fewer students in our technical schools. That's this administration's report from the technical college system. Those are students who would be fast-tracked for jobs. They are students who everybody agrees need to be in technical school. And a Hope plan that reduces the number of students who get degrees can only be called a failure, both for our students and our economy. And it does not have to be this way. We can stick with last year's plan where hope vanishes for most Georgians and we send fewer and fewer students to college, or we can have a plan that is both more fiscally responsible and that ensures that every year we maximize the number of high-achieving students who can afford to go to college. With respect to the scholarship itself, our plan is simple. Just as it was when Hope began, there would be an income cap in addition to the current academic requirements. This cap would be set as high as possible every year, depending on the lottery revenues. And it would maximize the number of students who get the full Hope Scholarship. I don't believe that Hope should be an entitlement program for the people who need it the least. This year, if the cap is set at a family income of $140,000, about 94% of Georgia families would still be eligible for the full Hope Scholarship. These are high-achieving students who've made the right grades. In some parts of Georgia, as we saw last year, this would cover almost every single Hope Scholar. And importantly, this plan is more fiscally sound than the current plan. Instead of depleting the rainy day fund, this year with a $140,000 cap, we would run a surplus. Based on the numbers that we have, with a $140,000 cap, Hope would not have to spend any of the reserves for several years. And in 2016, when the governor's plan is paying for less than half the cost of college, this plan would still be providing the full scholarship for all of those students whose families make less than $140,000. In other words, unlike last year's plan, the scholarship would be serving its purpose and would be financially sound. Now, we've also proposed reforms to the Zell Miller program and the HOPE grant to undo the damage that has been done and will continue. Now, I appreciate greatly the senator from the 24th, and I believe in my heart that this does not have to be a partisan issue. These are not tax dollars. These are dollars that are voluntarily given by people who play the lottery. There's no grand political philosophy that's at issue here. It's just a factual question about what is best for our state. And now that we know the true facts, I don't believe that any of us here are satisfied with last year's plan, and I hope that you will work with us to fix it. If you have a better plan than ours, bring it. I promise I will roll up my sleeves and work with you on it. But whatever we do, we cannot let hope vanish. And if the economic argument and the fiscal responsibility arguments don't move you, then go to your districts, walk into the colleges and the technical schools and the high schools that you represent, and I promise that you will see students, hardworking, high-achieving students, who will not be able to go and get a degree under the current plan. Those kids who get good grades and for whom the scholarship means that they either will or won't go to college, those are the kids that the scholarship was designed for. That's why they call it HOPE. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.